So Ghana is in crisis. Crisis on many fronts. We've seen fundamentally the economic crisis has triggered a chain reaction. We are seeing crisis on the front of education with the workers currently on strike. I'm talking about the teachers who are currently on strike because they're demanding cost of living allowance. That is a factor of the economy. If the economy is hard, then of course workers will demand that cost of living allowance because they say the cost of living is become unbearable for them. And then we've seen a situation with the schools again when it comes to a food crisis of a sort, which we are seeing in our senior high schools. Tonight, the Education Ministry confirmed to us that the reason why they are having a food crisis at the senior high school level is because of payment delay. So again, money, right? And so we are having all this. And then we have a labor unrest. Every labor union is asking for COLA. A meeting today collapsed. The talks to try and resolve it collapsed. So there's a lot happening, and many have said it's possibly down to the management of the economy. And we're beginning to see the rise of civic action. We're seeing this. We're seeing this come to the fore very, very strongly in the last few weeks. We are asking tonight, is civic action the game changer in the midst of this crisis? What does it contribute to resolving the crisis that we are currently in? One of the things that we've discovered, and I'm going to demonstrate it to you, is that each time in the last 30 years, or in the Fourth Republic, let's stick ourselves to the Fourth Republic. In the Fourth Republic, we begin to realize, and I'll demonstrate it very shortly, that each time we've had an economic crisis or a crisis that affects people's life, the lives of the ordinary people, we seem to see the resurgence of civic action, which is a good thing. And so let's get to that. And we're seeing something very similar now. And the question we need to ask is, has it changed anything in the past, and will it change anything now? Right now, this is one of the unprecedented ones, I must admit, because we have the Coalition for Democratic Accountability and Inclusive Governance that has been formed, and it's a very important coalition. And a coalition of 34 CSOs and 10 individuals coming together for this common cause. And they are demanding for the immediate actions on accountable governance and solutions to the current economic challenges. It's a key thing. But the whole host of things that they've asked, accountable governance is broad, but the trigger, it appears, has been the current economic challenges as we've seen. And you begin to realize as I go through this, that this particular demand they're putting forward, which has become a trigger for this coalition, run through the rest we've seen in the past. But the uniqueness of this is civil society coming together, 34 of them. And I dare say is very unprecedented in the nature of this beast that government will have to confront. 34. And if you go through the list of the 34 CSOs, some very formidable CSOs. Some of them are not even Ghanaian CSOs per se. They are international, non-governmental organizations have become part of this. So we have the Ghana Integrity Initiative, the CDD, the Media Foundation for West Africa, we have ASEP, we have Imani Africa, we have Africa Education Watch, TUC is there, Send Ghana, Star Ghana. And the thing about Star Ghana is that it's one of those very interesting organizations. They do a lot in terms of funding CSOs. They fund us even here at Multimedia for some of our projects. And so that's a very powerful organization. But Oxfam is the one that will jump at you, because Oxfam is, of course, they have a Ghana Oxfam, but Oxfam we know is a very powerful INGO, and they are part of this group of this coalition. That tells you something. It's very, very unique in its structure indeed. 34 of them, all formed to exact accountability, but also in the midst of the current economic challenges, to ensure that the government and the people that we've elected and given the power to represent us are acting in our interest and accounting to us. And one of the things they've done already is write to the Auditor General, I understand, because they want the Auditor General to apply his powers of surcharge and disallowance, which he hasn't done for a while. So that group is a very powerful group, and they have individuals in there too that carry a lot of weight. Some of the demands that they put for withdrawal of the controversial e-levy, total abolishment of the Japan mineral royalties deal, return of the state lands grabbed by public officials, payment of allowances to NAPCO recruits, among other trainees, immediate slashing of government spending, reduction on the public borrowing, reduction in the price of the petroleum products. So the whole host of things that they are demanding already, because they believe that a combination of all this is what has led to this toxic mix that has plunged us into this current economic crisis. Again, the 10 individuals who have come together are some individuals here. They have a long history of, joining civic, actions. One of them is Mr. Kotoampa. If you go all the way back to the Kumipreko demonstrations, he was very, very instrumental in that demonstration. And I'll demonstrate for you quickly. You see that at that time too, we were, having, a conversation with the IMF when it comes to VAT and etc. We see these very key names here that have come together to form this. Very prominent Ghanaians that have come together. And then we have the situation with this group also coming up. So apart from the coalition, small civic action, groups that are geared towards civic action, we've seen the lot. Fix the Country is one, emerged in the last year or so. Justice for Ghana has also emerged. In fact, this year, this is very recent, the last few weeks. Arise Ghana had also come forth with demonstrations, and of course the 34 CSOs. So if you put all together, this is what we've seen in last year alone. Majority of them, this, and this, in the last few weeks, all responding to the current economic circumstances and the general governance situation in this country, right? And Ghana, the IMF negotiation table, where you see this happening when Ghana appears to be going to the IMF, and there's a conversation around that. And that for me is an interesting point to note. If you go back to 1995, this was a year we went to the IMF. We had Alliance for Change, okay? And Alliance for Change, famous for the Kumipreko demonstrations in 1995. There was VAT they were protesting against. But something happened in 1995. Ghana ran to the IMF for bailout that same year, 1995. We got some money. So you see the first example of what we are seeing today, replaying in 1995 when we had the Kumipreko. VAT was introduced. The government was desperate for money, and so they introduced the VAT, just as we've seen with the e-levy, right? Government desperate for money, introduced e-levy. Protests have greeted it. 1995, very similar. VAT introduced, Kumipreko hit the street. Possibly one of the most powerful, consequential, citizen-led protests we've ever seen in this country, led to the withdrawal of VAT. Guess what happened later that year? We went to the IMF. You begin to see a certain trend begin to emerge here. Committee for Joint Action. This is famous because I had a very interesting encounter with the Committee for Joint Action as a young journalist covering the Wahala demonstrations. And this is in 2005. We had the Wahala demonstrations. Again, cost of living was high, fuel prices going up, and they came to demonstrate. What was happening around that time? Ghana was under an IMF program, which started in 2003. So that was context within which all this was happening in 2005 that led to the Committee for Joint Action emerging, which was a coalition of political parties and some civil society organizations came together to form this. Again, same scenario emerged there. And again, if you go to we've talked about Kumipreko already. We've dealt with this already. If you come to these demands we've touched on already, we have the 34 CSO, CDD, and TUC. We've dealt with this already. I want to quickly go to the situation with the other groups that have come up post that I want to also demonstrate for you. We've talked about the CJA already and the IMF bailout there. Again, you have the Alliance for Accountable Governance, which is another one that emerged. This one emerged and they came together to form the Agbewo demonstrations in 2014. Do you remember what was happening in 2014? We are just beginning a conversation with the IMF for a bailout in 2014. And so you had the Agbewo demonstrations. Agbewo is simply, they are killing us. right? And they have the Alliance for Accountable Governance doing that. Same scenario, same circumstances as we have now. Occupy Ghana then emerged in 2015. What was happening in 2015? We had a situation where Doomso had gripped this country pretty firmly, and people went on the streets. Probably that was the only demonstration I probably joined to cover as a journalist, but also participating in it, because the Doomso was biting everybody. So this is 2015. We have Occupy Ghana. Similar, right? In 2015, what happened? Ghana was back at the IMF, negotiating with the IMF. And so this story we've seen before. The emergence of civic action we've seen before. Anytime this emerges, but the key question we need to ask ourselves tonight is, as we asked in the beginning, how much does this contribute to changing the current circumstances and promoting accountability? What tends to happen is, when the crisis is over, the potency of the civic action seemed to dwindle. It seemed just to experience a certain diminishing returns. The politicians then also become very comfortable, and then 3-5 years time, we are back at the IMF, and then we see a re-emergence of the groups. And so we need to have a conversation about this. Civic action is good, but how can we make this a bit more permanent feature of our democratic practice? Because it's clear, when they emerge, we see results. Kumipreku produce results. I mean, the rest have shown. Occupy Ghana, powerful group, produce results. And I believe the current groups that are emerging, the coalition, very powerful group of 34, it will yield results. But how do you make that sustainable over a period, even after this crisis is over? My guests are joining me. Many of them are part of the coalition. Some of them are part of the other groups that have emerged. We'll have a conversation on this when we return from the break. Thank you very much for joining us. Bernard Mona is a man who has been there and done that. He's been such an integral part of many civic actions in the past. The Committee for Joint Action, CJA, in 2005, he was there. He was there all the way to 2009. And he's still part of the groups that have emerged in the last few weeks. Arise Ghana, together, coming together to lead with the Arise demonstrations. And he joins me in the studio. Kofi Bentil, the Senior Vice President and Policy Analyst with Imani Ghana. He's an activist, but he's a member of the Citizens Coalition. The coalition has been set up with 34 CSOs. And I insist, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, it's pretty unprecedented in the way it's structured, and the quality of the groups and individuals in there. Mary Ada, also with the GII. GII is also a signatory to the coalition. He's also a member with the Citizens Coalition. I'm delighted to have all of you join me for this conversation. I'll come to Bernard shortly, because Bernard did a press conference today. I'll come to him shortly, but I want to take a quick comment from you, Mr. Bentil. Mr. Bentil, so I wonder and I just going through our history with civic action. I mean, I wonder what your comment on that very interesting nexus between economic crisis and the rise of civic action. If you go all the way back to 1995, when Kumipreku was very active against that, later that year we went to the IMF. All through, it seemed to be very common thread that runs through, just as now. Does it say anything about the groups, the civic action, and the circumstances, and what it probably says about this current manifestation of it, as in your coalition that you joined?
Right. Good evening, Evans. Good evening to my colleagues, my panelists, and to your listeners. So, what does that say about us? Let me first start by saying that it is a positive thing. It's a very good thing. In fact, that is what every democracy hopes for. Every democracy will only survive, and I said only survive, if its citizens are active in protecting that democracy. Now, that being said, we need to understand that there's a hierarchy in terms of authority when it comes to a nation state. So if you, for instance, read the Constitution of Ghana, it starts by saying, in the name of the Almighty God, we the people. It starts by saying, we the people. And it goes down and says that we have a right to form the government that will, guarantee for us the rights and liberties that we require. And in the formation of the government will come down to appointing a president and all those other things. That hierarchy is extremely important. What it tells you is that the president is not the preeminent. So I often put it this way, that the office of the citizen is more important than the office of the president. Mm-hmm. It is the citizen that sets up a government to do for the citizen what is good for them so they can live an adequate life. Now, when you have a situation where the people appointed to be in government for the benefit of citizens are not governing for the benefit of citizens, it is proper that the citizens now rise up to either nudge them gently into a proper line or scream or stare them down and shove them into the right light. You must appreciate that there is an alternative to that. And we have in this country suffered that alternative. The alternative is this: where you don't have an active citizenry, which has the room to nudge either gently, like we do on radio and TV, or to shove them using demonstrations or other things, you would have a military takeover or people invading with the force of arms, overthrowing the government, and everything goes down. So what we must appreciate is that this is by design. And what we need to do is to work at making it more constructive and more effective. Right now in the UK, they have gotten rid of their prime minister.
Yeah.
And they are going through the processes to find a new prime minister. And there's no violence involved. All right. In Ghana, we do it every 4 years. Maybe if we develop this better, it may be possible at a certain point, because in the constitution, there are powers for the removal of a president, that we will fine-tune our democracy to the point where we can actually remove a president mid-term. So the first thing to note is that it is a good thing that is by design. And fortunately, Ghana is showing the way that citizen action is part of our democracy. In the past, there used to be a resistance to citizen action. But both of the parties now are realizing that where you have citizen action, it actually works good for the party, especially in opposition.
Yeah.
So by and large, what we need is more of these. Now, what you are seeing recently is a coalescing of individuals and groups who are citizen organizations and individuals. And that has also become necessary because of the reality of the risk of raising your head. Mm-hmm. I mean, those of us who do what we've been doing, we know what we have to deal with. And if you raise your head too far, it can be chopped off. People get attacked, businesses get, attacked, etc. And if even you don't get physically attacked or attacked in your professional one way or the other, it is just expensive to walk that path alone. It's difficult, it's tiring, and very soon you realize that you can't do it by yourself. But when you gather like we have done, it is difficult for anyone or the powers in, the people in power to attack all of us. And when we speak together, it has more power than when one or a few of us speak. And you must appreciate also that the group that has been formed is not a homogeneous group of people who agree on everything.
Yeah.
There are many things we disagree on, but there are things that we also agree on. And it tends to be that the things we agree on are more than the things we disagree on. We have had the good fortune and good sense as individuals and organizations to appreciate that if we can gather around the things we agree on and move our politicians and leaders in the right direction, it is good for everyone. And that is what is happening. So personally, I'm proud of that aspect of our democratic development. And I think it's a good thing, and we should do more of that.
I mean, Mary, the GII joined this coalition. What was your personal motivation for joining?
Thank you very much, Evans. Let me say good evening to the panelists and good evening to your viewers. GII, let me say, is one of the founding members of this group. And we believe that as a people, as Kofi has indicated, the numbers, the sheer numbers and the credibility of these organizations that we are dealing with most definitely would count for something. And we believe it has happened in the past and it will happen again. And we are particularly excited because we have thought this group through. It's taken several convenings to finally come up with what you have seen or what you saw being outdone. And so it's not just a fluke or one of such groups. Let me say quickly that groups are formed for different purposes. We are not a political group, but we believe that as civil society, we need to come together to ensure that people understand that they cannot take us for a ride anymore. As individual organizations, the risk of communication is even that high. But with all of us coming together, you need to go through all of us to be able to get to anyone. And we say groups are formed for different reasons. In this case, this group is formed for the long haul. And we have critical concerns that we want to address immediately. And those are the economic hardships, the issues around corruption and others. But then in the medium term, we are also strategizing as to how to continue to remain relevant. We need to be able to sustain what we are doing now. Just like you said, some groups are formed, they come up, solve a situation, and they are gone or disbanded. But in this case, we know that we have critical economic challenges that have spanned time, that have spanned governments. And so we need to be able to be prepared every time to speak out so that people do not in any way continue to form the erroneous impression that civil society and very active citizens who are in this country decide to remain mute when things are cool. That is not the case. At this juncture, we want to show that civil society is active, we continue to remain so, and we would speak to the issues continually so far as they remain relevant. And we are all being hard pressed. There is no one in this country who is not suffering. And so there is no reason why anyone would want to keep quiet. This is our mandate to speak up, to be active citizens. And for that matter, we say we want to be part of this because it's beyond anti-corruption. It goes beyond gender. It also speaks to issues around energy. It speaks to issues around our legal regime. It speaks to issues around inclusion. And one of our key requests or acts is around affirmative action. And so you realize that this is a coalition that is not unique to a particular thematic area. It is a collective group that is speaking to all the ills of our society that need to be addressed. And we are coming with facts, we are coming with figures supporting our advocacy to ensure that those we have voted and put in places of power and those who have been appointed as public officers do the right things. And when they make promises, we would ensure that we follow up, we would ensure that they at all times commit and also deliver.
Well, very interesting perspective there. Bernard, you, with the Rise Ghana demonstrations, you adopted a different approach. You're already on the streets campaign, demonstrating. Today you had a press conference. From what I understand, you were extending the street protest beyond Accra. Accurate?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Let me also say good evening to Kofi and then Mary, and to your good self and the many viewers and listeners across the world. Certainly, I welcome the civil society organizations, and I was amazed at the number 34 of them, with some individuals who decided to join. This should just tell you, ab initio, that Ghana is in a mess, and that some of these civil society organizations that in the past fell shy of coming to tell government reality, today have all realized that keeping quiet and doing
it's not an option.
It's not an option. Saying nothing is rather part of the problem. So it is time for them to start to speak up. And this is one of the major things that government should take seriously. Aside that, we also on our pressure groups have decided to mount the needed pressure to ensure that life become more bearable for the people of Ghana and majority of us. You know Sankana very well. I used to travel from here to Sankana, for instance, with a 700 Ghana cedis. I would be able to buy my fuel. Today, to be able to go to Sankana, I need more than 2,000 Ghana cedis, just in, and to come back, another 2,000 Ghana cedis. So in effect, to go to Sankana and come back, you need about 5,000, something that I needed.
This is in the Upper West region?
The Upper West region, something that I needed less than 2,000 to do if I had to travel. Today, things have moved. And this thing happened just within a very short time. As cost of living is escalating, income levels are measured and static and stagnant. Everything has gone haywire. You can look at inflation, you cannot talk about it. You can look at depreciation of our currency, it's nothing to write home about. You can look at the figures in terms of unemployment that confront us. Contrary to the pronouncements that were made that by the policy prescriptions of the government, that jobs will be so abundant that we'll have to be importing workers from outside to come and work in Ghana. Today, reality is sticking with all of us, that everything is gone bad. The financial sector, it is in total crisis. The economy simply doesn't exist. We said that it is an intensive unit. And so, if we keep sitting down, keeping quiet, and it is not that we have not spoken. When government started some of its programs, its policies, we warned the government. We told you that these paths that you are passing or you want to embark on will become calamitous for us as a government, as a nation. They failed to listen. The same government that propounded fantastic theories when they were in opposition. One of the theories that, look, we'll move away from taxation to production. We all clapped for them. Why not? Because when you reduce taxes, young businesses are able to expand.
But Bernard, in what you just said is an important paradox. You said you raised the issues in the past. They didn't listen to you. What's the guarantee that what you're doing now will make a difference?
We raised it and they did not listen, and we have run into the ditch.
Yeah, but you're still raising.
Wait a minute. They were the people who started talking about IMF and that no matter what, they will not go to IMF. Today, they are on the table with IMF.
Yeah, and from Imani, everybody said you will have to possibly go to the IMF.
We told them that, look, we told them that e-levy was not a panacea to the economic crisis.
And they said it will solve the problem.
It will solve the problem.
It comes back to my question. So each time you've told them, the leaders,
and they fail to listen, and particularly.
So my question remains: why do you think that this time?
It means that you have a president that is impervious of reality. If the president is listening, and your minister for finance is doing things that is constantly sinking the nation, the minister for finance cannot be the reason for which Ghana should suffer. If Ghana will suffer and the minister for finance will survive, then it means that you are a very terrible president.
I want to go back a bit because there's something about the current, as I illustrated, about the current rise in civic action like yours, which is not unique. Thankfully, you have been there for a long time as part of civic action. Let's go back to 2005, when you and others came together to form a very similar pressure group, Committee for Joint Action. Very powerful group, a collection of political parties and civil society organizations. You fought 2005 and beyond, all the way. Immediately the crisis ended, you almost dissipated. And then, of course, CJA is no longer in existence. We've seen many of them in the past. What is that thing? Share with me why it's almost always difficult to sustain this beyond the crisis.
When you have political poaching of your members, what do you expect?
Okay.
That is one of the reasons why some of the movements cannot survive beyond a particular regime.
Okay.
And so, for instance, the CJ, let me be very blunt. As soon as the NDC won power, the MPP was obviously defeated. Majority of the CJ members got appointed into government.
Okay.
You talk about Omane Boama, Mahama Yarga, Elvis Afriye, Ankara, even Chuichu Opoku, who was the convener of the CJ. Many of the people.
Who wasn't so partisan. Chichi Puku Dems were not very obviously partisan.
Yeah, but they got some appointment, and then they all moved in there. And so when they moved into the system, I remember even then, the CJ did a few demonstrations, and I remember one of the demonstrations.
In 2009.
Yes. We did a demonstration, and then the late President Mill said he participated in our demonstrations. Today, we are demonstrating against him. Then, of course, majority of the people moved into government. And then you were left without membership. So even to start, it means that in order to sustain it, you needed to cut new membership. And don't forget that when we are doing that, those in government will also be doing their own tricks to see that the movement doesn't
you touch on that problem, and it just reminds me that even Occupy Ghana had a similar challenge.
I'm just being blunt.
George Anda, for example, a good friend of mine who was very instrumental in Occupy Ghana, also, of course, then becomes
Minister for Finance himself today. Ken Ofori-Atta was there.
I mean, people who were associated. But, I mean, so you think that has been a problem?
It is one of the problems. Okay. Right. My brother that went to the Ghana Publishing Corporation.
Yes.
Asante.
Yeah.
All of them.
Very instrumental. Yes.
Yeah, all of them. So if you are in government, how do you come and participate in the actions any longer? So you see that naturally that group seemed to become dormant and docile. It will not function. And so that is one of the weaknesses. The other thing is that, look, we're fighting so that some situations can be ameliorated. And once the condition is settled, there's no need for you to go when you think that the situation is settled. These 34 civil society organizations that have come together because we are in this economic mess in our intensive care unit, if the situation becomes better, probably, you will see that they will say, okay, we came together in order to champion a certain stability of our nation. We've been able to raise it there. Let's continue to do our individual thing.
Stay with me. I want to tap into Kofi Bentel's view on that challenge. Kofi, I mean, what do you say about that challenge Bernard had just touched on? How do you make your group sustainable beyond what we've seen in the past?
So let me twist this a bit. The truth of the matter is that in a proper arrangement, you don't expect that these groups will remain standing groups. The design of the democracy is that we, the people, have our lives, we have our jobs, we have, the things that we want to pursue. And so we appoint people to go into government, to run government. If government works well, we, the people, don't have to leave our day jobs to come and nudge them gently or force them or shove them to do the right thing. So in a perfect situation where things are working properly, you would not need citizen groups, civil society organizations to be strenuous and stridently activists. And I want us to work towards the day when Parliament, which is where our representatives are, and which is designed to hold the executive in check, will be effective. If we get to the day when Parliament is effective in holding the executive in check and they are doing all the things that we hope they will do, there will be less need for citizen groups to rise up and do some of these things. So for me, not being a permanent fixture is actually not a negative. The problem, however, is to understand why we are not able to sustain them. So if you count my days before Imani and now, I've been in activism for over 20 years. There have been governments in and governments out. I'm an example of somebody who has not gone into government, and it's not because, I couldn't. So it's not everybody who wants to do that. Now, we also need to appreciate that sometimes it's the same pot of people that you pull from into the government. And I have always made the point that I don't have a problem if my friends are in government or people who are not known to me are in government. What is important is that they govern well. However, if you give me the choice, I would rather put people who I know in government. And I would rather have people who have fought on the streets with me in government, people who have shared my values, and people who have said things that I agree with. Because then if they go into government, I can confront them with the things that we all said. I can tell them not to become what they have ever criticized. So somehow there is a positive tinge to this whole idea of people leaving civil society and leaving activism and going to government. I do believe that activists make the best politicians. That's why some of the greatest leaders we've had, Kwame Nkrumah was an activist. And he clearly is the best president we have had. Look at Nelson Mandela. He was an activist.
It's a very interesting point you made, Kofi. Is it true in Ghana's case?
So,
again, if you go back to 1995 today, a lot of people who've gone, many would disagree with you that they've turned out to be good politicians.
Who?
So I didn't say that it is true,
Okay.
but I say activists tend to be the best politicians.
Okay.
Look,
But Kofi has not said
President
anything
Rollins
wrong.
is an activist.
Probably
Was an
one
activist.
of the activists has not been a
Okay,
good president.
he was an activist.
Yeah, Kofi, go on.
Evans, there are fake activists. There are people who are activists for the moment because maybe they are hungry, and there are people who get into activism. I've seen plenty of them who use it as a lever. They use it as a stepping stone to get into government.
Yeah.
All right. And we know some of them, but for whatever it's worth, what I'm saying is that we need to appreciate the fact that it is not entirely a bad thing. What, however, we should do is to hold the principles constant. Hold the principle constant that even if it is your friend that is in government, if they do the wrong thing, you will speak up like you spoke up when it was not your friend. And that's what I've tried to do all these years. So, in a sense, I want more civil involvement in governance. I wish it to be more of a permanent thing, as to say, if there is an issue that the government is trying to deal with, they would at least seek opinion from citizens. Look, there is an effect of free consultation or free consulting that you get from civil society organizations and citizens. Not every competent person wants to be in political office, but many competent people will be happy to speak about political issues and comment about these things and offer their free advice. And in other places, people find value in some of these things. You can go through some of the things that Imani has done, and we've always said that there are times when our research has been better than the paid consultants. So why not give the benefit or take the benefit of free consultancy, okay, from your citizens, because not everybody wants to be a politician. But if indeed there are competent people in civil society, why would you not allow them in politics? Or why would you, criticize them for getting into politics? I want a situation where Mary will become a minister and she will live the values that she has lived as an activist. I want to see the day that Mr. Mona will become a minister, okay, and he will continue to be an activist and continue to fight for the things that he believes in. All right. So, in a sense, it's good that we don't have these people as standing institutions, but you would always have them coming back when there is a dip in the quality of governance. What Mary was saying is that we have a situation where in the Fourth Republic, we are almost seeing that we may have to have a constant or consistent or persisting civil society engagement with politicians, because whenever we turn our back a bit, things just slide down and we have to come back and then push them back again. Yeah. So we need to, get a certain nuanced view of some of these things, because sometimes people are condemned and I don't think it's necessarily the better thing. Yeah. We should have good people go into politics.
Yeah, I mean, Bernard, I'll come to you. I know you have a point, but I want to pick Mary's thoughts on that. Mary, that's definitely going to be a big challenge going forward. How do you deal with this fantastic group, very credible, but how do you make this different from everything else we've seen before?
Okay, so thank you so much, Evans. One of the things that we have thought through in the initial stages or the teething stages of this coalition is the fact that we would need to sustain our efforts so that nobody begrudges us when we have results and then the coalition becomes quiet. That's not what we want to see. And so we are putting in place structures. So for now, we already have a volunteer who is our coordinator. Okay. And we're looking also at ensuring that we have a functional and running secretariat, putting in place all the institutional mechanisms. For instance, letterheads with a logo that you have already seen during our launching. And then we are going to have some critical staffing in place, who mostly may be volunteers. One of the other subgroupings we have identified, we would have a legal team, we would have teams for communication, we have teams, and these are going to be drawn from the various institutions. And the unique nature of them is the fact that when we have activities, these groupings come together to ensure that we roll these activities out. So it's a novel sort of, it's not GII doing it, it's not Imani doing that, it's not CDD, but it is the best of the best coming from these institutions to ensure that we are strategizing, we are implementing our activist activities, and we are preferring better alternatives to government to ensure that we are ahead. And so this, and one of the other things we are looking at, you may ask, is how do we get funding?
Yeah.
And we are responding to this. Various institutions will definitely make contributions to ensure that we are running and effectively running. But then also we would go out there to look for other secured sources of funds that will ensure that our activities are not curtailed. For instance, we are not just going to be doing press conferences or speaking. When the need arises for picketing, when the need arises for us to do demonstrations, we definitely will do them when we have no
Mary, the
other
time for the
option.
demonstration
But
is now.
Mary, Bernard has a word for you. Yeah?
The time for the demonstration is now.
Oh, most definitely. Those are alternatives we are all looking at. But for the coalition, one of the things we want to do is to get a presence at the national level and also at the various levels. And so we have already zoned the country. In the next few weeks, we would be holding the northern sector and also the western region press conferences to launch the process. Again, we believe that we need funding for our work. And so we are in the processes of launching an online app that is called the Changu, to ensure that even if you have 10 cedis to donate to us for every month, you donate that, so that we put this together. And then we'll put in place also accountability mechanisms to ensure that whatever you give, you see what it is being used for. Then again, individual members who are making contributions can also do so to the coalition, a citizens coalition, so that we utilize them for all our work. And so we also have a process in place to recruit new members. So we are not just stopping at the 34 civil society organizations. So at the launch, we put out an online application process that if you want to be a member of the Citizens Coalition, just fill the application form, and then it will go through a rigorous selection process. We have a committee in place that will look at it, because we have a criteria. We say you shouldn't be an active partisan political person, and you should show some qualities of an activist in the past. So we want to see that happen. And it could be organizations that are civil society or individuals. We want to see more prominent persons, because we will be setting those various groupings. And so journalists are invited. We invited all of you.
Yeah.
Every citizen, lawyers, we want more lawyers on board like Kofi Bentel, so that we can do strategic litigation and be more pronounced in getting some of the actions we need to get out there. So it's not just about going out into the street. It's also about identifying and interrogating all the other spaces available to us. Then when we hit the rock, then we'll have the going to the streets one.
So I hear you say, Mary, that hitting the streets is almost like your last option. You want to explore all the other options, dialogue and conversations and protests. And hitting the streets is going to be your last option.
No, it is not last option. It's one of the options in place.
Okay.
But most definitely, if you have alternatives to that, you are exploring. In this stage, we are launching out. We are recruiting membership. We want more of us, so that when we hit the streets, the Arise Gunners of our time and the rest, we know we have a lot of people who understand, who support our cause, who are committed to this cause of seeing a Ghana where social justice, seeing a Ghana where equality of opportunities abound for all of us, seeing a Ghana where corruption is not the norm, seeing a Ghana where inclusion is promoted, and seeing a Ghana where myself and you can speak without anyone tagging us as one party or the other. That is what we want every Ghanaian to appreciate, to speak out, because silence is no longer an option. In our space, silence can never be an option. But there are so many options available to us, which we are going to utilize in the coming weeks.
But so that's their approach. And you've been there, you've seen it. This is complementary to yours. You don't see them as existing in conflict to yours, but as partners in this thing, because you all almost have the same agenda.
So certainly, we cannot be at loggerheads. I think that what we are all doing is to see a better, a prosperous Ghana, a Ghana in which the poor and the wealthy can find food to eat, they can find income to support themselves, and become better citizens. And where.
But there's a danger, isn't it, Bernard?
Which is the danger?
Because we watch what's happening in Sri Lanka. I mean, these groups are good, but what is the risk is people are hungry and angry.
So the government must know that.
This could be fuel. I mean, the protest, the civic could be fuel or lit the fuse that could.
No,
that could
we have
something
spoken
else.
at length at the issues. How many times don't you call me and we speak on the issues? And anytime you speak, you are bastardized by the regime. They think that you are an enemy of the system, and that all of us should come clapping for them even when they are making very petty mistakes that are sinking the economy. And so when we fail to tell them the truth, then it means that we are actually part of the problem.
But how do you walk that fine line?
Yeah, it's
between making your voices heard in this time, but also, avoiding becoming an excuse for what, riots
I'm not sure.
Instability.
The security, and in particular, and I have said this on one of your interviews here, that when national security decides that the way they should operate is to institute fear amongst the citizens, it gets to a point that people are no longer afraid. So when national security comes to tell us that citizens be aware that there are some suspicious elements that are working and some movement in the Napanduri range, if you are proper national security, you will not do that. If you have suspicious movement, what do? You set up your eyes, you make sure that you close on them, you apprehend where necessary, interrogate, and where you have to charge, you charge, and inform citizens that these things happened. But you are telling people through these mediums that, look, there are some people suspiciously moving along the Nakwanduru Ridge. By the time you finish that communication, if indeed it's true that they are moving there, they also got that information, so they will change their tactics. National security now becomes a threat onto these people. So when I see, and what I see is that anytime they make those pronouncements, then there is a certain fear. Government push more resources to national security. They tell you that they are embarking on education. They have more to spend, yet the issues are not tackled. When we are talking about the fact that unemployment has reached a crescendo, and you come and tell us that you have done what you call NAPCO, and we tell you that NAPCO is not a sustainable job opportunity for the young people, and you wash us away. Today, reality has dawned on us. NAPCO is nowhere to be found. Majority of the people are not available or cannot even get the monies that they have worked for. Then it means that government, you were trying to play smart. Reality has dawned on you. Most of the people at NAPCO are now out there. They are unemployed. They've tasted some little income. They have probably started to become independent because they have rented their own places, and all of a sudden, boom, NAPCO is collapsed because you did not listen to wise counsel from us. So when the cake is coming, then it means that if you listen to the citizens, you will not have run into that crisis. And I'm sure that you want to refer to Sri Lanka. If the Sri Lanka government was listening to the people, look, when they were to go on the protest, you saw the heavy-handedness of the government. The military and the police all went out. It was when civil society organizations said that you cannot stop the people from going out to vent their anger. If you cannot solve our problem, you can't find us the food to eat, you cannot reduce our transportation, and we are angry, and we want to go out there to go and talk, and you don't want us to talk, you don't want us to match our protest, our anger away, civil society match up, the media match up, every institution match up, and eventually the situation was out of control. So the examples out there must guide us to be able to safeguard our democracy. And when Kofi Bentil was saying that he wants to see me in government as a minister, I was looking at him as a possible vice presidential candidate so that we can run for president.
So are you the president and he's the vice president?
Oh, of course, he is used to being vice president. So
that's a good one.
Evans,
yes,
Kofi. Bernard, but let me make a very important point on what he just said. Evans.
Yeah.
Okay. So as to why we continue to speak, even though it doesn't look like people listen. In the first place, let me make this clear. We've had people in government and people out of government. And the people in government, we are sure, listen to us. The issue is that they just choose not to do the things that maybe even if they consider, they will know are the better options because there are many political considerations. But at Imani, we have a certain principle. And our principle is this. If government wants to do something, and we have a certain view of it, we take our time and we approach the issue from the position of ignorance. We tell ourselves that we don't know this thing enough. And then we go and research it. So we do deep dive research into the various issues that government wants to deal with. And when we get the information, we form an opinion. And we are not shy to put forth our opinion. We do that for a number of reasons. Just in case the government did not know, we want to provide that information plugged in so that the government now knows. And if the government now knows, we are hoping that they will take the advice and improve the decision making that they are involved in. However, if government chooses not to use the advice, everybody in the country knows, because we make these things public, that they were told. An example is free SHS. We had a lot of publications 12 years ago talking about some of the possible things that could happen on this, whether it's that or STX or many different things. You are aware of the things that we've written on.
Yeah.
The important thing here is that the citizens know that when they were embarking on this path, somebody alerted them to these pitfalls. And therefore, if they go against the advice and they go and crash, they don't have an excuse. They cannot say they did not know. And over time, we will get to a point where we would all start respecting more research, information, and analysis. So maybe we're only 20 years into our fourth republic, but maybe by the time we get to 50 years, it will get to the point where if Bernard is president or minister, he knows that these people don't just talk by heart, and maybe he will take half of my advice. As for what he's talking about, me being in politics, I haven't even heard him at all.
Well, Bernard, thank you very much. You are going to Kumasi?
Yes, we are going to Kumasi on the 22nd. But before then, on the 20th of this month, we shall be holding a public forum. Imani Ghana will be speaking at that forum.
At the forum, okay. So you're also adding that conversation to
OPEC will be speaking. The university dons will be speaking.
Okay.
So it's going to be
so you're not blending the action.
Even TUC we have invited to come.
I see. Bernard, thank you very much. Mary and Kofi, I'm grateful. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.